Hi, and welcome to today's Biznology Digital Marketing webinar. I'm Mike Moran, founder of Biznology and a senior strategist at Conversion, a leading social consultancy. I'm the co-author of Search Engine Marketing, Inc. and sole author of Do It Wrong Quickly, How the Web Changes the Old Marketing Rules. I'm a veteran of IBM, managing groups in IBM.com for 8 years and retiring from IBM in 2008 as a distinguished engineer. Today, you'll be hearing from Rob Petersen, who will present 10 social media metrics every marketer needs to know. But before we start, we need to recognize our sponsors. Barn Raisers, a full-service digital and social media solutions company that builds brands using proven relationship principles and ROI. Gagalamp empowers companies to amplify their social media content by leveraging employees, partners, and resellers. Try Gagalamp for free today. Garris Digital, a full-service digital strategy firm that reaches deeper into the conversation than any other agency anywhere. As we wait for more attendees to join, let me review the format of our webinar. Our Biznology webinars last just 30 minutes. You can easily fit them into your busy schedule. We record each webinar and we'll email you that link later this week. During our speaker's presentation, you can use GoToWebinar to ask a question. That orange arrow opens and closes your controls. If you have a question, simply type it into the box labeled Questions at any time during the event and press the Send button. I'll select a few questions at the end of our webinar and pose them to Rob. While we're waiting for the last few attendees to join, I'd like to remind you that the Biznology monthly newsletter and daily articles are available for free at biznology.com. So if you're not already a subscriber, we hope that you'll sign up now. Thanks again for spending 30 minutes with us. We know how valuable your time is, so let's introduce today's speaker. Rob Petersen is president of Barn Raisers, a digital marketing solutions company using social media, the power of community, and proven principles of relationship marketing to build brands. He's also on the MBA faculty of the Rutgers Business School, where he teaches courses in web analytics, SEO, and social media measurement and ROI. Rob has been recognized by the American Marketing Association for building billion-dollar businesses multiple times. So if you've ever struggled with measuring your social media activity, this is the webinar for you. And during this webinar, we'll be using the Twitter hashtag BizNoWebinar in case you'd like to share information during the webinar. Rob, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. When we talk today about the 10 social media metrics that matter, I'm going to do it in the context of a case study. I thought it would be helpful when we talk about the 10 most important social media metrics to have an example in front of us, one that we can refer to so that you can see how you would apply these metrics both to an example that we'll talk through as well as your own business. And you should be familiar with this example by a very wet Mark Zuckerberg and the headline. This example that we're going to talk about for the 10 social media metrics that matter is the Ice Bucket Challenge. And in August of 2014, it raised in donations $100 million in 1 month versus $2.5 million the year before. So it's arguably the most successful viral social media campaign ever, and maybe one of the most effective campaigns of any kind ever. And the reason that we're going to do this is because we want to show you obviously know this example. It's obviously a success, and so it raises the question, well, how can metrics help us account for what really worked here, and how can they even guide us and make the results even better? And because it's really a topic that we should be taking into consideration in our marketing, because social media is here to stay. And the facts say that 9 out of 10 of us are using social media, and it's important to our business. We see that 3/4 of companies are now spending money on marketing analytics, yet only 42% are able to measure their social media activities. So is it that they just don't want to measure them, or they just don't know? Well, we're going to help you today by letting you know the 10 social media metrics that matter. So here we go. Metric number 1. This is a listening metric, really, and the idea here is that before you start, with any social media initiative, you should be looking at the keywords that you want to be putting in front of your audience that you can learn from. If, for example, Mike and I decided to open a bakery that made blueberry pop products, we'd want to be sure that we were putting out words that were to our audience so we could understand what were the needs that they had, what were the products that we wanted, and how might we serve them better. And in the case of the Ice Bucket Challenge, what they did was, you know, as much as it was funny to watch Mark Zuckerberg or Barack Obama or Bill Gates or any of the many people who douse themselves with water for this area, yet that's not how the ALS Association made their money. You had to go to the website and make a donation. And so one of the things that would be important if you were the ALS Foundation and you were starting out on the Ice Bucket Challenge was not just measuring people who are looking at the Ice Bucket Challenge, but is it really creating awareness for our nonprofit? And as you can see here from this chart that's from Google Trends, which measures search activity on the internet and the increase or decrease over time, that during the month of August 2014, you can see how there was a huge leap in people searching out the ALS Association. So obviously, the effort was successful not only in terms of amusing people and creating but it did create the idea to have people say, well, what's this organization all about, and is this something I want to get involved with and donate to? So keywords are very important when you're starting out to saying just what am I trying to achieve, what are keywords that are going to be important to me when I start out on social media. The second area that's important is links, and there are many tools, and we'll give you some of them during the course of this webinar that you can use to sort of measure out what you put out to your audience that they click on. For example, a video is a link, a news article is a link in a post that you write, even a picture or an infographic is a link. So it's important when you're looking at your social media measurements to say, well, what are the things that people click on most often? What are the posts and what are the types of links that I put out that seem to keep my audience interested? And the reason those two things in particular are important is they really sort of give you a grounding on what your strategy should be. They also help improve your presence with the search engines, which is still a search engine page is still how most people find a website. And the idea of having social media inform what your keywords should be, and the idea of having links working, really, if you have, for example, social media icons to share on your website, that's a great way to drive traffic to your website and show that your visits are improving, and send signals to the search engines that your traffic is going up. And also the idea here is that social network pages, Facebook, Twitter, they're also web pages. So they give you the opportunity on a search engine page to have not just your website represented for a particular keyword, but also your social media pages. And these days, up to a third of people are first learning about a brand through their social networks. So these two things contribute to a third measure, which is how does all this help me in terms of standing out and ranking higher on search engine pages? The next measurement that you want to be aware of is how many people you reach. And this can really, in many cases, just be a manual calculation. You count up really how many people like your business on Facebook, follow you on Twitter, follow you on Pinterest, and from there, you kind of the additive factor gets to the area of what is your reach. It's getting more in terms of social media networks also being ad platforms, that a lot of the social networks, Facebook in particular, are starting to use reach as a cumulative factor of not just how many people like you, but how many people share a particular post that you might put out there. And so reach is becoming a larger number to many social networks, especially if you look at it from a standpoint of you're going to be advertising on these networks. The next thing you want to look at in terms of the fifth most important social media metric is the metric of engagement, and that's really who reciprocates and how. Do people, when you put a post out, do they share it? Do they comment on it? Do they add a tag to it? Do they retweet it? And up to now, the first four measurements that I gave you are really things that you can kind of do yourself, you can do manually. But when you get into the area of the fifth and sixth measures that we're going to talk about, it's really hard to just do this on your own. So what I've done here on the bottom is list a couple of resources that people normally use when they want to get to the area of just measuring engagement. And I'll give you an example of how it's displayed in just a second. And the two I've mentioned here is one is called Simply Measured and one's called Radian 6. Simply Measured just is about $500 a month, and Radian 6 is for generally a license is about $15,000 a month. But these really are things that get into just what your audience is saying and doing and how they're responding versus your competition, and it can be extremely valuable information. And another thing that engagement is often measured with is the area of share of voice, because first of all, you want to see how people, when you put information out there, how does your audience engage with it? Do they comment on it? Do they share it? Do they retweet it? But you also want to know how this compares to your competitors. And so let me give you an example of how that might be shown. And this comes from Simply Measured, and it's a page that measures basically Facebook activity, both engagement and share of voice, for the cruise line category. In the bottom left, you'll see that what they've listed here is starting with the area of just what are the total number of fans for the various cruise lines. And as you can see, the big cruise lines that have the most fans are things like Princess Cruises, Disney, Holland America. But when we get to the area of engagement, you can see that basically the Norwegian Cruise Line actually is the leader. So there's something that they're doing that in social media that's giving them the opportunity to be engaging more with their audience. And this is very valuable information that you could apply if you were Norwegian Cruise Line or if you were one of the other competitors. For example, if you were Norwegian Cruise Line, you could look at this asset of engagement to sort of look at, first of all, your web traffic. Does it result in more people as a result of all this additional engagement coming to your website and learning more about your cruises? If you ever were to offer a promotion on a various cruise, you could see if the redemption rate was higher on Facebook versus your website because of the engagement factor. And if you were a competitor, you had this information, you could obviously see, well, our people is awareness for Norwegian Cruise Line going up as a result of all of this. So engagement and share of voice kind of work together, kind of hand in hand as measurements number 5 and 6, but they're very important social media metrics to be aware of. The next measurement that you care about is the measurement of sentiment, because and what that is basically, it's kind of a machine measurement, if you will. Computers basically look at all the posts that you're putting out on the various social networks, and they either ascribe by the language that's in it, I love this or I hate that, whether it's a positive or negative sentiment. And you want to look at sentiment because you want to know that basically what you're putting out is either seen positively or negatively, and why. And this particular sentiment analysis, first of all, comes from a resource called socialsearcher.com. This is a free tool that you could go to at the URL that's down on the bottom left and put in any keyword you want, and you'll get a sentiment analysis. So we put in the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge into this, and this was when the campaign was actually running in August 2014. And one of the things that you'll notice here is that the sentiment is generally positive. You can see here in the circle here that the ratio is 4-to-1 of people who say good things about it versus negative things, and it's higher on Facebook and Google Plus than it is on Twitter, to use these 3 social networks. So this was a very important finding, and really one that maybe guided even the success of the program, because obviously what happened here is that you'd want to know why the sentiment was less positive on Twitter than the other 2 networks. And when the ALS Association dug into what the reason was there, is that there were more people on Twitter than the other networks kind of posting things about what was really probably one of the things they had to watch most carefully, which was there was sentiment out there that was saying that a lot of the funds are being misappropriated, they're not going to the right people. So the ALS Association was maniacal during the month of August of really making sure that everybody knew through press releases that they updated daily on their website that really that they were in control of this and the money was going to the right associations if it was coming in through the website. So this is an example, and sentiment is an example of how knowing the whether by social networks the testimony is positive or negative, and really doing something to dig into it if you find it's going negative and to course correct for it is very important. So I've given you a lot of metrics that come out to your website, but the ALS Association, like so many other businesses, really did business not just on the social networks, but on their website. This was where you'd make donations, and for most of your businesses, probably your website is where you want to ultimately take people so that they can get in contact with you or buy from you or find more information about your products. So knowing how many people from social networks come to your website is another, and what are the visits to your website is another very important metric. And this can be measured in any website analytic tool. This picture here is from Google Analytics, basically the sources that contribute traffic to your website. And so you would want to see when you were running a social media campaign, was the traffic from social media greater or less than it was before you started the campaign? And all of these pieces of the pie, social media in particular, if you dug into that particular slice, you'd be able to see what came from Twitter, what came from Facebook, what came from YouTube. So you'd get a really good idea of really what was contributing what. But by far, really the pay dirt, the one that sort of measures am I really getting business value from this, is the measure of conversions. And conversions don't mean just donations or sales. That's one definition of conversions, but the real definition of conversion is what percent of desired outcomes that did you get of the total number of people who visited your website. And so it could be, if you wanted to, if you didn't sell something on your website, which many of us don't, it could be, a conversion could be how many people sign up for an email newsletter, or how many people download an ebook, or how many people view a demonstration video or take advantage of a free offer. So these are all examples of conversions. And conversions are so important that really there might be more than one. And you usually, if you do have more than one conversion, you do have what we call a macro conversion, the conversion that's most associated with revenue. It could be somebody who buys something, or it could be somebody who basically took advantage of a free demo, because most people who take advantage of the free demo would become customers. That's what your business analytics may say. But it also could be who attended a webinar, who downloaded some product information, who subscribe to your newsletter. These also might be precursors of people who take the macro conversion. So conversion's a very important metric. And how might you kind of apply all this to business value? Well, Avinash Kaushik, the head analyst at Google, says, you can look at social media when you do all these metrics basically down to the simple functions of how did I get business from it? And these are not meant to be mutually exclusive, but one way to measure social engagement is to say how much of really positive things came from maybe people who commented on a post that I got in touch with, or a blog that you wrote, and how much really business is getting from you being out there and contributing and getting involved and building relationships from comments. You may that you use social media really to try to make sure that you grow your audience. So the second area is called the amplification method, and that's how many people share what you put out there. And the third, if you were just kind of getting into social media for the first time and you didn't know which social network might be most valuable to you, you might use what Avinash calls the applause measurement. How many people basically, how do you build your following best, and how many people like you, and how does your audience build on what social networks the quickest? And again, these are not meant to be mutually exclusive, but they're ways to kind of break apart social media into distinct buckets that can say, well, where does business come from? Engaging directly, putting out valuable information that people seem to respond to, or just building my audience as fast as possible, knowing which social networks are the most receptive to my message. So there it is. That's the 10 social media metrics that matter. And I'll take it back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Rob. I'm sure our attendees have a much stronger idea of how to measure their social media activities, but you didn't answer every question. I've got several good questions from our audience teed up for you. And I'd like to remind our audience that it's not too late to ask your own question by typing it into the questions box in your GoToWebinar controls. Before we get to the questions, I'd like to tell you about my Agile Marketing class. I'm very sorry, folks. I've lost my spot in my script here. Marketing has traditionally used long-term planned campaigns, often changed just once per year. Today's marketing needs to turn on a dime when customers' needs change or your competition changes. Agile marketing helps you identify what's working and what isn't so you can do more of what is bringing you sales. Go to courses.mikemoran.com for more info. We're about to start firing questions at Rob, but we need to thank our sponsors once again. Barn Raisers, a full-service digital and social media solutions company that builds brands using proven relationship principles and ROI. Gagalamp empowers companies to amplify their social media content by leveraging employees, partners, and resellers. Try Gagalamp for free today. Garris Digital, a full-service digital strategy firm that reaches deeper into the conversation than any other agency anywhere. Now on to your questions. So Rob, if I can't measure conversions, and if we were to focus on just a couple of metrics, which ones would I start with?
Well, good question. It really depends on what your objective would be. If you were just, say, getting into social media for the purpose of building an audience, you would probably look at things like reach and maybe links. Some of the more measurements we put at the top. If you were looking, again, using those measurements, if you couldn't measure conversions, if you were looking at it as a kind of strategy tool, just to listen to what your audience wants from you, again, you might use keywords and links and some of the earlier metrics just to get an idea of what's the type of content that I should put out that would be most helpful. If you were trying to basically use social media to drive traffic to your website where people could get to know you better or get to know the services you do and certain details, you'd probably look at things like website visits and traffic sources and some of the areas there. And if you were doing it with a good idea of what your competitive set was, again, you'd probably be looking at engagement as a tool to sort of see what can I do in social that might give me a competitive edge. You might be looking at things like engagement and share of voice.
That's great, Rob. Thanks. Is there any way to calculate reach instead of just manually counting?
Sure. You could actually go into, again, I was mentioning that as things get, as social media gets to be more of a paid media property, anybody who's in Facebook Insights, for example, would give you your reach, and a lot of the social networks now have their own analytic tools, so you could go in there, and then it wouldn't just be a manual calculation. They'd give it to you, and they'd probably put on some of the different factors of how many people not only like you or follow you, but just what your level of engagement is.
Terrific. Let's see. Next question is, which social metrics are best to determine if a campaign is working?
Well, again, all of these have to be guided by what's the objective of what the business objective of what you're trying to do. So, for me personally, I would think that your business objective would be to get some type of action, whether it is to make a visit to a store or take advantage of a trial offer or download a coupon. So, I would tend to think that some of the metrics at the end, particularly conversion, would be the best way to see, because that's ultimately what people want to know. Did it drive sales or as close to sales as we can get in the digital area? So So that's I would tend toward the conversion metrics and the website visits and things like that could show if the flow was demonstrating real business value.
Terrific. Let's see, next question. Can you count metrics such as sentiment or share of voice on a specific topic?
Absolutely. Sentiment can always be done on a specific topic, and it might not. That topic might be helpful for you. It might not have your brand in it, but it might be something your brand stands for. So absolutely, and in fact, the tool that I used in this webinar, social-searcher.com, works on a keyword basis. So, I just happened to put in the ALS Association as the keyword when I did that particular sentiment analysis, but you could put in rare disease or any other tool that might have been appropriate to sort of see what awareness was of a particular topic, not just the company or brand.
Thanks. Next question. Is sentiment analysis from the free tools really accurate?
Yeah, it's accurate. I mean, with any sentiment analysis, again, the accuracy, real accurate factor is, remember, a machine is doing this, and it's doing, it's doing this based on words that obviously have a positive or negative connotation. So I would use sentiment and try to do it in this particular presentation as a directional tool. And if you saw something that was different between the different social networks, I would dive at that point into some of the direct text that's being done to sort of get what the insights might be.
Terrific. Let's see, last question. My boss doesn't really believe in social media. He believes in advertising. Is there any way to calculate real social impressions so that we could value them the same way we value advertising and show how much social saves over buying ads that reach the same number of people?
Sure. Well, first of all, if you buy any social network, Facebook or Twitter or any of them, with your media buy will come impressions. So, which tend to be the metric that is sort of the common denominator across all metrics. So, so I think the easiest way to convince your boss would actually probably be to do something in the social network area on a paid basis. On Facebook versus something else to sort of see did it generate more impressions. And again, with any of the social networks, anything in digital in particular, you'll get how many people click through to the page, and if you have certain factors that you want on a conversion basis, you can even get to them too. So I would tend to go at it that way with some type of paid experiment that you might do. It has impressions as the kind of measurement there, but probably takes advantage of more metrics that are more conversion or sales oriented that you can get through digital.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much, Rob, for these great ideas, and thanks especially to our audience for your participation and your questions. If any of you had questions that we did not have time to answer, you can email your questions to Eileen@mikemoran.com, and she'll be sure to get them to Rob for the answer. Later this week, we'll send you all a link to the recording of this webinar to listen to again and to share with others. We also invite you to mark your calendars for our next Biznology webinar, Do-It-Yourself Influencer Marketing, with Chris Abraham, scheduled for 11 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time on March 22nd. We hope to see everybody back here then. Bye, everyone.